Welcome to today's Innovation Demo Day. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're excited to highlight some innovative solutions to reducing food waste. Today we'll be focusing on waste-derived products. And when we think of waste reduction solutions near the end of the food supply chain, we often think of composting and anaerobic digestion. However, there is another subset of recycling-related solutions that focus on giving wasted food another life by turning it into a new product. From animal feed to bioplastics to cosmetics, there are a wide variety of potential uses for wasted food that will divert it from landfill. Today, we'll have the chance to hear from 4 amazing speakers who are working in this space. We'll learn more about their latest innovations, who's on their team, and what traction they've made in the space thus far. We'll also have a chance to ask some questions of these speakers after their presentations. I encourage you to send through questions for the speakers through the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible during Q&A. But before we dive into the innovator demos, let's take a look at the waste-derived products as a solution area to food waste and climate change. ReFED's Roadmap to 2030 and Insights Engine outline 7 key action areas that you'll see on the current slide. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a segment of solutions that fall under the Recycle Anything Remaining key action area. Through ReFED's research and data, we've defined Recycle Anything Remaining as finding the highest and best use for any remaining food or food scraps in order to capture nutrients, energy, or other residual value. The 4 innovators that we will speak to today will show us how their waste-derived technologies do just that. As I mentioned, waste-derived products fall into 4 product types. I will go ahead and describe those 4 product types now. The first area is agricultural inputs. These inputs are created by processes that transform food scraps into liquid or otherwise processed fertilizer typically applied in an agricultural setting. This type of innovative technology often utilizes recycled food from supermarkets and processes them through mechanical, chemical, heat, or enzymatic processes that result in a stable nutrient product sold to agriculture and other cases. The reason why this solution is so important is because it makes use of wasted food to grow new crops, thus creating a more sustainable and circular food system. Next up is bioplastics. Bioplastics are biodegradable materials that come from renewable resources, in this case, food waste. They're often made from biomass such as corn stalks, sugarcane stems, oils, and fats from renewable sources. Waste-based bioplastic uses feedstock that would otherwise have gone to waste. Rather than growing it specifically for the plastic, this can include unwanted byproduct waste or post-consumer food waste. Bioplastics have benefits that reach beyond reducing food waste. This innovation also decreases the need for plastic production from non-renewable resources. Then there's biomaterials. Biomaterials are created by transforming food waste into innovative and valuable materials with uses such as concrete and building materials, textiles, supplements, and beauty products. Examples include fibers from root vegetables being used in concrete, rice husks being used for construction materials, discarded parts of fruits and vegetables being used for extracts in dietary supplements, pharmaceuticals, and food preservatives or cosmetics, and my personal favorite, banana fibers being used to create carpets and textiles. Finally, there's processed animal feed. This refers to the processing of food waste into pellets or other feed formats for use as pet food or livestock feed. Processed animal feed is composed of items that require treatment through heat or other chemical processes to eliminate any potential harmful pathogens to the animals. Because the United States produces a lot of livestock and has high rates of pet ownership, as you can see my dog walking around in the background, this is a solution that is particularly important for creating a sustainable food system. And with that, I'm thrilled to begin the innovation demos. As you hear from our presenters today, I'd like to remind everyone to send questions you have through the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them during the Q&A. Additionally, if you're interested in setting up a meeting with any of the presenters, we will be sharing information with the audience on how to sign up for those meetings. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Juan Guzman, CEO and co-founder of CaproX. Juan has dedicated his career to commercializing novel biotechnologies ranging from microbial fuel cells to novel fermentations, approaches that extract value from waste. Juan identified the market opportunity for the way-away fermentation while completing his PhD in biological and environmental engineering from Cornell University. Juan, thank you so much for being here, and I'll hand it off to you to tell us more about CapRoX.
Great, thank you, Lily, and thanks everyone for the time to hear about what CapRoX is up to. Next slide, please. As Lily mentioned, I got one more after this. CapRoX is a spin-out from Cornell University. During my PhD, we published some findings that we had a natural fermentation process that could upcycle problematic byproducts from the Greek yogurt industry and published that. And Newsweek really got excited about space shuttles flying on byproducts made from food waste. And our story is kind of still the same. We're really envisioning making fuels in the future, but there are other more realistic products to start selling in the early stages as we start scaling. This is really where we got our starts with, next slide, please. With developing the technology. And CapRoX's solution we call the way away, and we're by talking to customers, we're looking to provide it as a treatment as a service, so TaaS. And what our technology really is a natural fermentation. So there's no genetically engineered microbes, but it's a natural fermentation, a lot like anaerobic digestion, which we found is just extremely strong at upcycling dairy byproduct streams. So essentially anything that contains lactose sugar in it. So we've identified byproducts from Greek yogurt production and cheese production, whey protein powder production, where essentially these facilities are taking one truck of milk coming in, and these trucks are essentially leaving with maybe 80–75% of that volume in byproducts that they have to dispose of, typically at a cost. So by providing our systems as a service, we allow our customers to get access to this upcycling technology for no capital cost. We take care of all the risk of treating these byproducts, managing the system, and we produce useful products, two of which are recovered water, which they can reuse on site, which makes sense in certain parts of the US. And then where the revenue really comes in is from selling green chemicals, and which we'll talk about later. Next slide, please. So if you're a dairy processing plant, what we're really looking at providing to you is an immediate 30% savings from what you're currently spending, which is essentially paying a trucker to truck this byproduct, sometimes hours away, to essentially treatment facilities or potentially farms for feed or fertilizer. But we also see a lot of indirect opportunities where facilities don't have to manage logistic chains of disposing of managing networks for disposal networks or trucking. And we've all heard some of the news stories about how difficult trucking has been recently. By having a dedicated off-taker of these byproducts, these facilities can actually start increasing production with lower operational risk. They know someone's going to be taking it every single day. And then there's also access to recycled water. And because our process has some significant sustainability impacts, these customers can actually claim some of these impacts with credits with their customers and even for carbon credits. Next slide, please. To discuss a bit about the sustainability impact, we actually worked on a study with the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, and by upcycling just 10% of this problematic acid waste stream produced from Greek yogurt production in New York, we actually found that you could eliminate about 250,000 gallons of biodiesel that would have been burned from just trucking byproducts around. And even compared to the most sustainable practice today, which Lily had mentioned earlier, anaerobic digestion, we could eliminate greenhouse gas emissions by about 90%. So our next slide, please. So our customers can really expect some significant sustainability impacts by using a solution like a way. Now, the green chemicals I mentioned earlier, we call them bio oils, but what they really are natural, non-GMO chemicals sustainable chemicals that would have been sourced from palm oil today. So our raw ingredient that we are able to sell is called fatty acids. And these are considered platform chemicals. They're building blocks for much more complex and higher value products. We can make esters and MCT oils. So these are ingredients for flavoring and fragrance and even food and beauty products. We can make bioplastics and even biofuels and sustainable biodiesel. But really our products, because of the fermentation process, are very high quality, and we've been able to provide samples to specialty chemicals distributors, and they've compared it to places where they're buying it today and finding that our products are higher quality than some other alternatives that they're able to source. Next slide, please. So if you were to look compare our process to the kind of the status quo and other existing technologies, the status quo today really is trucking byproducts off sites and providing it to wastewater treatment plants or spreading on fields, fertilizer. They might be getting a small value from it, but trucking is quite expensive. And essentially we're finding that you basically break even. The sustainable and probably the largest practiced source for disposing of these byproducts is anaerobic digestion. So you'll be making methane gas and electricity, which you can reuse on site. You can expect maybe a little under $500,000 in revenue from a facility treating like 20 truckloads of milk a day. There are some opportunities to make ethanol, for example, but not a lot of these systems exist in the US. But if you had a system like the CapWorks Way Away and owning and operating such a system, you could expect considerably higher sales just because of the high value chemicals that we're producing. Next slide. So we've been around since about 2018. After spinning out from Cornell, we've won about $1.5 million in SBIR funding, along with about $250,000 in pitch competitions. And we've participated in a lot of the key accelerators like Cleantech Open, Food Bites with Rabobank, and then most recently Dairy Farmers of America. And we've been really transitioning out of the lab and focusing on scale up. So we have a 1,500-gallon demonstration system, which we've been running since about the spring of last year. And we're continuing to operate that and actually looking for a new home for that later this year. And we're going to be actually posting some of our oils that we're making in-house on our website later this year. Next slide, please. Just to zoom in a little bit more on what we're building, we've scaled quite a bit out of the Frankenstein basement kind of reactors like we've been using for our fermentation systems, and really focusing on understanding what it's going to take to go to the next level for treating greater volumes of byproducts from the dairy industry. So this is an example of a system where we're looking at a lot of our installations would be more of these containerized architectures because of the task nature of having to move systems periodically. And to the next slide, please. And we are looking for new partners to continue evaluating the technology across the US. That system that's shown here is actually looking for a new home in the fall of this year, with the intended plan of providing a 1 truckload per day commercial system in the summer of 2024. We are always looking for new feedstocks and potential customers to talk to about solving their byproduct and waste problems. And one opportunity we see is in the treating dairy along with sugar products. So if you're making sugar, like syrup shakes or fruit drinks, we'd love to talk to you about some of those opportunities. Finally, we are going to be producing oils and selling them on our website in a small volume, really as samples. But if you are interested in flavor fragrance or MCT oils, like for keto diets, we'll have some of these on the website later this year. And then finally, we are looking to start networking with investors for a fundraiser we're planning this year, really focused on continuing pilot study with a new customer and evaluating some new higher value and larger markets, larger market products for our oils like bioplastics and biofuels. So if you'd like to learn more, or if you think that there might be a problem that we could potentially solve for you in the future, I'd love to talk to you. And thank you very much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Juan. I can't wait to follow along with CapRoX's journey. as you launch your bio oil product line later this year. And we'll see you in just a little bit for the Q&A. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
And next up is Tony Bova, CEO and co-founder of Mobius. Tony has a PhD in energy science and engineering from the University of Tennessee in the Breslin Center for Interdisciplinary Graduate Research and Education, and a Bachelor of Science in Honors in Chemistry from the University of Toledo. Tony has worked in the development of lignin polymer alloys for the last 8 years and was the inventor of Mobius's core polymer technology. In his role as CEO of Mobius, Tony has built relationships with R&D partners, manufacturing partners, and customers related to bio-based and biodegradable plastic innovation. He's currently a member of the Kroger Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Advisory Council, and we're so excited to have you today, Tony. I have tried to give you slide control, so we're testing a couple of new technology pieces on the back end. So go ahead and take it away, and we'll hear from you soon.
Well, thank you very much, Lily, for the introduction and for the invitation to be able to present. And thanks to all of the attendees who are tuning in to listen. I do believe that I have control. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
So as Lily said, my name is Tony Bova. I am the co-founder and chief beard in an endearing way to the rest of our team at Mobius. And we believe in a future where there's wonder in waste. We're a team of molecular upcyclers on a mission to create value from the unavoidable waste streams from food, forestry, and agriculture. So every year, there's over 260 million tons of unavoidable food waste streams that come off of centralized processing facilities. These can be things like carrot pulp from making baby carrots or juicing, husks or skins from citrus and fruit processing, other skins and pomace from making things like ketchup from tomatoes. And it gets even larger once you start looking at the forestry industry and other parts of agricultural residues. The footprint of this every year is over 1 gigaton of carbon equivalent emissions from land use change to create new land to grow new products, the transportation to move these items and the actual wastes around, and actually landfilling those things where they can turn over into CO2, or if not in a well-managed landfill, actual methane, which is a lot worse. Annually, there's over $14 billion in disposal costs associated with the industry. That's kind of a burden that we as a team are looking to alleviate. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. So the current status quo with disposing of these materials falls into 3 buckets. There's animal feed, which on the EPA's food waste hierarchy is the top, but has large limitations in terms of being able to actually find an offtake partner that can take the volume at a consistent rate. And also that you may have to make capital innovations to treat that to actually reduce the risks of disease transmission. Anaerobic digestion is a good opportunity if there is a nearby AD facility, and building a new one is very large, and those generally don't become profitable unless they are very, very big. And then composting, while it does eliminate a lot of the other risks associated, it does take up to 90 days to industrially compost organic waste, and compost still has a relatively low market value. Next slide. So at Mobius, we actually view food waste in terms of its nutritional content the same way the actual food is. So if you think of food as this combination of sugar, fat, fiber, protein, phenolic materials, and vitamins, we see the waste as the same. And while they may not be edible to us or be able to be brought into the actual food or animal stream, all of those are actually the same building blocks that chemists and engineers like myself use to make new products. Next slide. So what we do at Mobius is we take organic waste from food processors and forestry companies, and we take those and use our technology and skills in chemistry, biology, engineering, and a big one, which is building relationships with these processors and offtake partners to actually convert those into circular ingredients and chemical building blocks. Next slide. So to do that, we think about the technology platform that we're building as a subway map. Just like a subway needs to get a group of mixed passengers each to their individual destinations, we see food waste as this mixture of things to do the exact same. By using different engineering, chemistry, and biological technologies, we can separate the sugars, fibers, fats to get to their end destination, and then in the future, continue to build effectively subway line extensions to upgrade those crude streams into higher value chemicals and products. Next slide. The first technology that we've built to do this is what we call our lignin polymer express. So we are able to take lignin from the pulp and paper industry, which is one of the primary byproducts of making paper and pulp, and using an extrusion process, create biodegradable polymers. We have been working on applications for those in plantable in-ground degradable containers for the horticultural and agricultural industries, as well as coatings and binders for controlled release fertilizers. Next slide. So the way that our business model will work is that we want to be able to partner with waste generators to be able to, in the beginning, provide them a lower disposal cost, and ultimately in the future, as we vet out the end market scalability of the technologies, be able to actually do revenue sharing of the products we sell back to those generators so that they can turn some of those cost centers into profit centers. And we recognize that buyers of ingredients in the chemicals and materials space, food and drink, agriculture and horticulture, and CPG products have a lot of pressure, both from internal ESG goals as well as their consumers, to have more circular and sustainable ingredients in their products. Next slide. Here's the theoretical supply partnership opportunity. If we work with a company like Bolthouse Farms, for example, they produce over 72,000 tons per year of carrot pulp, and that represents over a $14.5 million opportunity for all of those fractions. Next slide. If we take a look at a lot of these centralized processing opportunities, there's over $80 billion in market value, from everything from pomegranates to potatoes. Next slide. Our team, while we may sound like a bunch of nerds, we definitely are, but we're highly passionate about combining entrepreneurship and science to actually take innovations that are solving world problems while creating value for the over 50% of this organic mass that is grown by farmers and foresters around the world that normally just ends up as trash. Next slide. When we started the company, we were just two beards and a pitch deck, and now we have moved on to raise over $2.5 million in total funding from investors. We have multiple SBIR grants from NSF and the Department of Agriculture. We're really honored to be part of the first innovation cohort from the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation from Kroger, and have support of great industry and organizational relationships like ReFED. Next slide. So our large vision is that there's over 1 billion tons of organic waste generated every year. And we would love to be a 100-year company that is able to bring all of those waste streams into the actual production of all of the products that we use every day, eliminating all of that lost carbon. Next slide. So our asks are, we're looking to have learning conversations with waste generators who have these products that they are looking to find alternative ways to valorize them. We're looking for actual byproduct samples to get in the hands of our team so that we can process them, characterize them in the lab, and have meaningful conversations about the potential values. And then we are looking for partners in terms of waste generators, buyers, actual team members. We're interested in hiring more chemists and engineers, and then also investment. Next slide. So I love to part with a quote from our unofficial waste expert, Oscar the Grouch. Just because you're trash doesn't mean you can't do great things. It's called garbage can, not garbage cannot. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. It's so exciting to see the expansion potential through those companies that are already producing those various byproducts. And I'm also loving that Oscar the Grouch made it into your presentation. That's amazing. Thank you so much, and we'll see you a little bit for the Q&A. Awesome. Next up is David Wishnick, co-founder of Nutraberry. David is an innovative chemical engineer with an accomplished marketing and business development background. In addition to founding Nutraberry, David earned a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from Madison, Wisconsin, and an MBA in 2011. A fun fact about David, his very first job after college was at Nabisco Oreo production plant, measuring the moisture of Oreo cookies. He has also worked in healthcare at Baxter Healthcare Injectable Formulation Lab and as a validation engineer at Abbott Labs. Thank you so much for being here with us today, David, and I'll let you take it away. Oops, David, we might not have audio from you. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, thanks again. Sorry
perfect.
about that. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Lily. In 2011, while completing my MBA, I began to discover I was very entrepreneurial and all the opportunities in food and beverage were happening from the bottom up. Since my undergraduate degree was in chemical engineering, I thought a good place to start to fish for ideas on what to build a company around would be to organize a conference with the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. At that conference, I met a professor, Graham Allen, who had been a chemical engineering professor for decades and just retired from the UW at the age of 90. He made me aware of the health benefits of berries and introduced me to some Pacific Northwest fruit processors who educated me on fruit processing and said if I wanted to build a company around something that would help them, it would be around a side stream that's created during the production of seedless puree and pumice, which is the solids left over after juice concentrating. And after tinkering with an R&D process in 2014, I went into business with Graham Allen's son, Robert Allen, leased a food processing facility in Seattle, Washington, and scaled up our manufacturing process. Over the past 10 years, we've grown a lot, and we've added Quinn to help us fill some of the larger orders that we've filled.
David, you're on mute again.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. I guess I'll just start from here. Then about 6 years ago at IFT National, I met Carlisle Newell, who's helped us and introduced us to some great people that have helped our business and advised us in many of the decisions. And of course, my mother, who was one of the first computer science degrees, about 1978, I think, and one of the few women, of course, in the computer science double major in finance, and really helped me cultivate the business with some of the decisions and made me aware that luck is something you can't create, it's given to you. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to share with you our story. So the way people perceive food has changed drastically over the past several years, but there appear to be two societal trends locked in for the long run. First, that the environment be protected along the food chain, and two, demand for healthier products. This has given way to a brand new category called upcycled food. Simply put, upcycling food reclaims nutrient-dense side streams that we've talked about that would otherwise be discarded and transforming them into healthy ingredients that can be used by CPG manufacturers. Our competitive advantage is that we're in Seattle, Washington, and 95% of the raspberries grown in the United States are grown here in the state of Washington. So I have a little video that I hope works, and I am clicking on it. It might take a second. Let's just see. Thank you. So Linden is where most of it is grown, and this is just one of the sources that we work closely with. So there's many generational farms out here, and what has happened is cold storage is pivotal in doing that. So there's many access to cold storage because the people that produce these sugar-rich seedless fruit purees immediately freeze them. And when we procure the seed cake, it's what we call the side stream of seedless puree and pumice, of course, for juice concentrate. We purchase it, but it goes on the same truck, goes into cold storage. And what happens is that's the actual seed cake that we eventually go up to cold storage and get, but there is a lot number that's associated with that seed cake. So the seedless puree run is attached to the seed cake. And when we pull it out of cold storage, there's a bill of lading we receive, which gives us full traceability because we're plug right into the fruit processor, and the fruit processor has complete traceability. So we have traceability from farm to our end product going out the door, giving us FSMA compliance. A second competitive advantage is that the seed is 10 to 15% oil. And that nutrient-dense fiber with all the water-soluble nutrients, we micronize that to 5 microns. That amplifies all the flavor profiles and the polyphenols and elagitannins. So I like to use, I've gone a little bit too far. So this is a picture of the seed oil, and then the defatted fiber we talk about, and that's sizing profile, but I like to compare it to the whole dried fruits. For example, our defatted raspberry seed powder is 5% sugar, where a dried raspberry is 60% sugar. Our seed powder is 60% fiber, where a whole dried berry is 15% fiber. And actually, the vast majority of the polyphenols are actually in the seed of the fruit. So it's about 3 to 4 times higher in polyphenols, and making it 5 microns increases the bioavailability even further, and the flavor as well, because the phenols have a flavor profile to themselves. So sugar reduction is a possible application. We've been around for 10 years. We've filled some very large orders. Upper right-hand corner, 30-gallon drums of raspberry seed oil, 90 gallons, total around 700 pounds. That means we had dried 7,000 pounds of seed to produce that order, leaving about 6,300 pounds of defatted powder. And we began sizing it to backfill micro beads. We work with a variety of berries and branded personal care CPG manufacturers. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner some of the powders that we've been shipping out. And I'll give you a quick introduction to our plant and introduce you to Robert, the other co-founder, and a quick demo and an application.
My name is Robert Allen, and I am one of the founders of NutriBerry, and I'm very pleased today to be here to tell you about berry seed products that NutriBerry produces.
When fruit processors produce seedless puree, they often just throw it away or use it for animal feed. The reason we procure the seeds from the processors is that we dry them and press them for oil. And that nutrient-dense fiber that comes out of the oil press, we mill that to a very fine powder because it's very high in polyphenols. Polyphenols are prebiotic. That means the microorganisms that we have in our gut, we eat them. They produce very healthy compounds that have been associated with preventing everything from depression to chronic disease.
This fiber behind the seed samples is our finished product, our raspberry seed powder. I have mixed 5 grams of the raspberry seed powder into this Chobani yogurt, which represents a dramatic increase in the amount of fiber in the product. It mixes in easily and quickly.
NutriBerry is a win for consumers by providing more access to healthier options. NutriBerry is a win for the environment by preventing food waste. And NutriBerry is a win for the food ecosystem by making it more profitable.
My name is Robert Allen, and
We should, there you go. So yogurt, plant-based meat, baked goods. Baked goods are perfect because it actually increases the heat, increases the flavor profile. We'll be at Natural Products Expo and SCIF, Southern California IFT Supplier Days, giving out chocolate samples. Chocolate's growth is a lot to do with the flavonoids and the health benefits of dark chocolate. And we're looking for fundraising opportunities, convertible notes, direct equity, and no reasonable offer is not considered. So we'd love to connect with people. Appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much. And I have my email address over there if somebody wants to drop an email. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. As a fellow resident of the Pacific Northwest and berry enthusiast, I love to see those byproducts and waste streams going to another use. So thank you so much. And just a friendly reminder, if any questions are coming up for you, please feel free to shoot them through the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. We have one more presentation, and our final presenter today is Rihanna Razali, Head of Business Development and Strategy at Renewable. Rihanna is leading business development and strategy for Renewable, an agricultural technology company that uses organic cycling science technology to transform unrecoverable vegetative food byproducts into a platform of sustainable technologies for soilless farming. She formerly co-led the development of one of Southeast Asia's largest banks' sustainable finance network. She was also on the Central Bank of Malaysia's working committee, developing Malaysia's first value-based metrics for Islamic financial institutions. Prior to that, she worked in the areas of private equity, business development, and expansion strategies across the ASEAN region. Rihanna completed a Master's of Science in Sustainability Management from Columbia University in New York, and she also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Politics and International Relations from the University of Melbourne in Australia. Thank you so much for being here today, Rihanna, and I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lily. It's such a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Rihanna. As Lily has introduced me, I'm the Head of Business Development and Strategy at Renewable. I'm very excited to present Renewable. We are a New York-based company, and we have created a profitable solution to reduce food waste. What we do is we take organic cycling science and proprietary technology, and we've converted food waste into three main things. It's one product. It's a water-soluble, industrial-grade, and organic hydroponic nutrients for indoor growers. Next slide, please. So we have assembled an amazing team. We are led by a founder who is a deep, deep sustainability practitioner. She co-developed our technologies with a plant scientist. We're also led by a serial entrepreneur with significant banking experience. We have a manufacturing guru who has led operations across multiple industries. We also have a PhD in agronomy. And lastly, there's myself, trained in sustainability with a background in international private equity. Next slide, please. Great. So the solution, could go back one slide. Thank you. All right, so the key problem that we're trying to solve is, as we see indoor farming booming across the world, and what we're talking about is a $16 billion industry. It's growing at a 24% CAGR. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being invested into the indoor farming industry, especially in the last 2 years. But their growth is very much hampered by limitations of their existing technologies. One of the most fundamental limitations that we're referring to is they rely on synthetics as their primary input. Now, why is this a problem? Number one, they pollute. Number two, there's an extremely thin margin for error. And essentially, these farms are leaving dollars on the table by selling conventional as opposed to far more profitable and increasingly desirable organic produce. Next slide, please. So the market opportunity that we have at hand. So for the last 30 to 40 years, organic production has been something of a holy grail. The fact is, no organic fertilizer has been successfully water soluble. Organics to date have been largely cost prohibitive. And in fact, what it's ended up producing is, as that picture suggests, biofilm and mold buildup for a lot of these farms. It attracts pests, clogs up systems, jams up infrastructures. You've got variable productions, which then leads to operational burdens. Next slide, please. This is why we started Renewable. So we take food waste, we turn it into an alternative source of nutrients. Indoor farms that are growing without the usage of soil, what I mean by that is they use predominantly and only water, can now grow without the needs for synthetic mineral salts. We then reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by diverting food waste from landfills. It's a direct replacement for mineral salts, and we're reducing the amount of trucking of food waste for both farms and food manufacturers. Now, if you look at the image on the right, that's an actual image of a customer that used our product to grow lettuce at home. They have been using synthetic mineral salts, and quite frankly, their seeds were not doing well. And within a day of using our product, their seeds recovered, or the seedlings, recovered by about 90%. So we were really, really pleased with that outcome. Next slide, please. Our motivation is very simple. For every ton of food waste diverted from landfills, 3 tons of carbon emissions diverted from the atmosphere. Now, how we affect an indoor farm directly is we reduce an indoor grower's carbon emissions by 3 megatons of GHG emissions per acre per year. Next slide. traction. We have a really, really unique business model. We receive food waste for free from our partner National Hauler, and then we turn it into organic hydroponic nutrients. We then sell directly to commercial farms and resellers, and we project reaching profitability by the end of this year. Commercial farms are now using our products to replace their mineral salts, and we have really promising case study results as shown on the left side of the screen. We can validate it. We have a sales pipeline of at least $10 million of annual recurring revenue in pilot, and we anticipate converting a large percentage of these customers within just the next 6 months. In terms of fundraising, we've raised $2.6 million to date. We closed our seed round in November 2020, whereby we successfully raised $1.1 million. We've also launched our manufacturing facility, which is in upstate New York, Rochester. And through that entire process, we've developed a slew of new technologies, which we're really excited to get out into the market. Now, in terms of partnerships, we've got one coming up that we're really, really excited about. We're working with the city of Glens Falls in upstate New York. We're transforming a formerly abandoned and distressed urban infrastructure into a vertical farm. Now, what's interesting is that this business model is replicable. We're creating jobs, we're promoting economic development, and importantly, it's transparent. And this is the first of its kind. Examples of upcoming farms and resellers that we're working with, we have 100 acres. It's an urban farm, and they are basically providing rapid response solutions to food insecurity and also NutriTower. They essentially create an at-home indoor garden for consumers like you and I. Next slide, please. And one more, if that's okay. Thanks, Lily. Great. Okay. So what are we looking for? We are really looking for a closed loop agriculture focused partnerships. Specifically, what I mean by that is number one, closed loop packaging providers that are also reutilizing food waste. Number two, indoor farming research opportunities, people that are actively pushing forward research in this field. Number three, climate focused technology that we can incorporate into our production line and manufacturing processes. And lastly, food or agriculture GHG emission services. And what we mean by this is measurements, tools, and software of any kind. Next slide. All right, great. So if I can leave you with anything today, I'd leave you with the following. Number one, our environmentally friendly but highly scalable solution and business model provides a very cost competitive agricultural input, but with higher value for farms. Number two, we've removed the technical challenges that prevent indoor farms from growing organically. At the same time, we're still opening up opportunities for conventional growers to grow using less inputs. And lastly, we're very much open to partnerships that push forward closed loop practices. So please feel free to check us out online, on our website, social media, and my contact details are there if anyone wants to learn a little bit more, or if you see any potential for collaboration, our lines are always open. That's it for me. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rihanna. I'm very excited to see Renewable continue to expand with your exciting new partnerships. That was our final speaker and demo for today. So thank you to each one of you for taking the time to share your reduction solutions with the audience today. Thank you for the audience being in the audience. And I would like to spend our last bit of time together by bringing everyone back on screen and doing a short Q&A. I know we have some great questions coming through the chat. So let me go ahead and take a look at those questions. And while I do that, you'll see in the chat that my colleague Sarah has been chatting through about ways to get connected with these folks that we talked to today. So if you do want to take advantage of that, please go ahead and connect with them directly via their email addresses in the deck, which we will be circulating afterwards, or you can get in touch with me directly, and I'm happy to connect you with these folks. Awesome. Okay, so we have quite a few questions coming in. I'm going to start with you, Juan. Someone had a question about a little bit explaining about the business model. So are you actually selling the physical system and an annual service fee, or does the how exactly does that business model work for your technology?
Yeah, good question. So we're entering into the market with a treatment as a service business model. So we've seen this kind of idea happen in the wastewater treatment space with new technologies. It just takes a while for adoption of, I guess, risky novel technologies, especially when you have to hire an experienced team to really understand what to look for and operate. So we're really looking to enter into the market by providing our systems for free and our customers would pay per gallon of byproduct that's treated, and we would agree on a contract before installation, and Caparex takes care of all the oils and stuff that covers the capital and all the operating costs for operating the system.
Awesome. Thanks so much. A question came through for you, Tony. Can smaller farms and dairies and ranches participate in opportunities with Mobius? Or is it typically easier to start out with larger entities? How do you like to form your partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. So depending on which of the technology areas that we're looking at, if you're talking about waste streams that you have, we definitely are interested in working with small and large organizations. I think that one of the focus areas of our business model, similar to what Mon just mentioned, is that this smaller modular footprint of equipment will make it so you don't have giant $1 million installations to do this stuff. And then on the actual products, for some of like the lignin polymer applications that we've been developing for pots and fertilizers, those are still in development. And I think they will be big partners that will be the ones that will help us with manufacturing, but testing, anybody and everybody that's interested, we always need more field opportunities.
Awesome. I have a question both for Rihanna and David, with your kind of consumer-facing products, having directly marketing to consumers. So would love to hear what messages you found to be that resonate the most with consumers, the most impactful. Is it kind of the food waste angle? Is it broader environmental impacts, cost savings, health, otherwise? Rihanna, I'll start with you, and then David, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, sure. So we actually sell directly to farms, so it's not necessarily to consumers first and foremost. What we have found is it's actually been quite a mixed bag. So all of them want to do things organically. All of them want to be free of the chemicals. And the message that they want to put out is that it's about healthy food. It's about creating access for people to then reconsume healthy food. So that's been one of the main messages that we've come across.
Awesome. And what about you, David?
Yeah, the vast majority of our business is B2B as an ingredient manufacturer. Just to be clear, we use our CPG product, the pouches, more as a calling card. That being said, consumers are fickle. They don't surrender quality for upcycling. So upcycling is important, and it's a broader message, but the health benefits and micronizing to remove grit and texture have been helpful to overcoming some of the hesitation manufacturers have had. On a consumer level, definitely both upcycling and the health benefits have been core to people wanting to adopt it.
Awesome. A question right back for you, Rihanna. Is renewable only a solution for indoor farms? Does it work for outdoor farms as well?
Yes, right now we're only focusing on indoor farms. The goal is to make sure that we can supply and support soil-based farms as well, but that's a completely different beast on its own, and that requires a significant amount of research. We have our eye on it, but right now we are predominantly working on indoor farms.
Awesome. Let's see. All right, back to you, David. Can you speak on how much is going to landfill, and then if some of the processors do identify that value, or like what exactly, how are you diverting that waste stream? Is it through partnerships, or how is that working?
We buy it from them. I mean, we don't really ask where it's going. We assume it's going to landfill. Fruit, pumice spoils very quickly because it's very high in sugar. So whether you would have to use it, and they make tremendous sums of it, and getting it from point A to point B is expensive. We don't press the processor to tell us. We just tell them what we want to procure, and we buy it. And we buy it at a price that makes sense because there's a cost to change. And we want to cultivate those relationships and make it last. So we don't really press them to tell us. And even when we do, they're hesitant because the processors generally don't want to admit that they're throwing it away. So it's kind of like a sore spot there. So we don't really do that, to be quite honest.
Yep. Nope, that makes complete sense. Awesome. So I know we only have a few minutes here today. I want to do like kind of a lightning round and get to each one of you around any barriers for broader adoption of kind of these upcycled products and any challenges that you see. And then where are you finding areas of particular success that you would want to share as best practices for other solution providers out there? And let's start with you, Juan. We'll go Tony, David, and then Rihanna.
Yeah, so I guess we're seeing most of our positive feedback from companies that are trying to be more sustainable and actually implement these practices. The issue, disconnect between new technologies and customers is how long is it going to take to actually get there. And for fermentation technologies, at least, there's like a rule of like 10 to 15x scale ups every time along the way. You can't just go and build a huge facility without a ton of risk. So our focus is to essentially find small markets and for products that would let us scale kind of more sustainably and learn everything along the way that essentially treats small commercial systems like pilots essentially, and learn things along the way. But we are getting a lot of feedback from large producers that are like, we have 200,000 gallons of byproduct that we need to get rid of every day. And can you move faster? So I guess we're balancing that and looking at new markets to take our oils to. So we were initially looking at, and still are focused on flavored fragrance, but now spending a lot of effort on biofuels, especially biodiesel. There's a ton of interest with shipping issues from sending palm oil and soybean all over the world due to COVID and shipping problems with overseas that and even in New York State, they just implemented the 5% biodiesel requirement in heating oil, which is kind of changing the ecosystem a little bit. So we're seeing some societal change towards things that are going to help us to accelerate a little faster, but we're just hoping to find partners who are willing to work with us on a 1 truckload a day to a 5 to a 10 truckload a day, and then just see our opportunity and let us kind of scale with them.
Awesome. So basically expanding that capacity to scale before you hit the 50 truckloads a day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go over to you. I can't remember who I said next. Let's do David since you're off mute, and then Tony will come to you.
The success we've seen are companies that make sense. We work with brokers. We've done a lot of USADA events too, and tapped into international trade like Korea and Japan, and we're moving those in parallel. So I only see probability and finding companies that align and want to do that. All the companies that have purchased from us make sense. In other words, there's continuity and that you would have expected it, even though we're not there. So we work with brokers and do a lot of the agriculture trade meetings to kind of just get to know the international markets, and the ones that have moved forward, that make sense. They're educated, and you kind of just have to find your niche. I think that it was Juan who said you incrementally grow our plant and our capacity, and we just keep on marching along, because consumers do want, all other things being equal, they want to be part of the solution. So it's really just developing capabilities to be and produce high quality products that you don't have to make texture trade-offs, and you still have to meet the quality needs. So we've refined our process over the past 10 years.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Over to you, Tony. What are you seeing as barriers and areas of success and best practices?
Sure. So I'll start with the barriers because I feel that the areas of success will hopefully knock those barriers down. So I think there's probably 3 biggest for us. One of them, which I will totally agree with, that Juan mentioned, is starting with innovations that come out of the laboratory. A lot of times the academic environment just requires a different level of funding and scale that typically is harder to come by. So we have been successful in being able to leverage grant dollars, both from the government and philanthropic, to help de-risk that technology and get us closer to where investors are interested in saying, now let's together work to tackle the business risk. I think another one is that and this is, I think, the challenge that all of us are working, uniformly to tackle, is the idea that waste is waste. Like retraining people who are our consumers that are going to be buying a product that they don't even associate with waste, but is a fertilizer, is an oil, is a chemical input, is a plastic. Almost all of the, as a chemist myself, scientists and engineers are taught, you use clean stream raw materials. So like thinking that stuff can come from another waste stream is not as prolific. And so sometimes there's some education there. And then for our team personally, I think that the other biggest challenge is talent, and not because that there isn't any, but because there are so many new companies that are doing upcycling and sustainable chemicals and materials, that there are so many more options for the people who want to go into that field. So I think that's a really good problem to have. So on the success side, definitely would echo like the grants and philanthropic support, organizations like ReFED, and there's another one that we're a member of called the Green Chemistry and Commerce Council. You're able to get into the room with the actual downstream consumers of your products that are already at table stakes with you, knowing this is a thing that we want and we need more of. You're not out there convincing. And then the other big areas of success that I think that we've had is that there is no shortage, I think, of the waste generators that, at the drop of a hat are like, yes, I'm happy to engage in a conversation about how I can, at a minimum, just reduce my waste diversion costs. And at a high end also, comply with new regulations and maybe meet ESG goals for our corporate board governance and all those other things. So I think it's all tying together slowly but surely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tony. In our last couple of minutes, Rihanna would love to hear from you. And maybe Jackie, while Rihanna is talking, do you mind launching the poll? We'd love to just hear from the attendees, kind of what was helpful today, how we can improve our programming in the future. But Rihanna would love to turn the floor over to you to hear about your challenges and successes.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the main things that we have found is that getting data, besides obviously coming from us, but really showing that what we have is comparable to going with synthetic mineral salts, that's been something that we've been really working on, because prior to this really did not exist, right? The other thing that I would say is that a lot of these indoor farms, it's a pretty nascent industry compared to soil-based agriculture. And so they're still figuring out what they want to measure in terms of GHG emissions. One of our biggest value add is that we are taking that out. And so showing them that this is really going to be a huge value add, they know it, but how high is it on the spectrum of their prioritization level? So really trying to move that up for them and working with them to move that up. That's been huge for us. In terms of success, we have had no shortage of farms that are interested. Everyone, as I mentioned, everyone really wants to do the right thing. Everyone wants to be better at producing food. Most people who have started this, of course, if you do it well, it's a profitable business, but they care about food production. So that's been really, really promising to see. And I personally am excited to see where it goes and how we take it further.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to our 4 wonderful speakers. It was really, really great to hear from you guys today on your technologies. I would like to make one final plug. I know we're at time, but ReFED's Food Waste Funder Circle is hosting a webinar called Unlocking Impact Through Blended Finance Solutions, coming up on March 30th. So blended finance solutions have been used increasingly over the last decade to mobilize capital to help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And for this specific webinar, speakers will have Andrew Apempa from Convergence, the Global Network for Blended Finance, and we'll explore how blended finance works and how it can help advance and scale food waste solutions. So to all of you funders and food waste solution providers on the line today, I highly recommend that you check this out. And with that, I will go ahead and let folks go for the day. Thank you so much, everyone.